Hi guys, and welcome back to Done with Work. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys some of the most common data types in Python. But before I get into it, if you like the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps out a lot. So the first data type I'm going to be explaining about is the integer. Integers are whole value numbers, which means they don't have decimals instead. So in Python, to initialize a variable, rather, we don't have to go ahead and write things like, for example, integer, int, and then we just say the name of the variable, for example, and then give it a value, right? This is not how Python works. Rather, instead, we can just call in the name of the variable we want to write, for example, health, equate it to the integer. Let's say I want to give 5 health, right? So Python instantly recognizes that health is 5. So it assigns it the data type of type integer, which means this is an int. So let me go ahead and print health. If I run this, you can see we get the value of 5. And if I were to print what is the data type, I go ahead and write type, bracket, and then pass in health. It's going to return me the data type of health. If I run this, there we go. We can clearly see that health is an integer. Now, another common strings are just basically a bunch of characters encased within quotation marks, right? So to initialize a string in Python will be really simple. We just call the name of the variable we want to call it. For example, I'm going to call it name, and I'll equate it to 2 quotation marks, and I'm going to write some text inside. Let's say John, right? And then I can print the name, and we get John. And if I have to go ahead and ask what is the data type of name, we get class of string. Now, another really cool thing about strings in Python is that we can actually access each individual character inside of the variable itself. The way we can do that, for example, let's say I want to get the letter J, right? I'll go ahead and type the word name. Then I'll type the square brackets. And now before I do that, right, there's one thing we have to understand first. How do I access each individual value, right? How do I know what value is what? Or rather, in that sense, there is a sort of number pair to each character in the string, right? So for example, strings, the first character will get a sort of ID or number of 0. Then O will get 1, H2, and N3. So in that way, we can call each individual character V1. So let's say I want to call J. I pass in 0 to get the first letter of name. So I'm going to delete this. And if I run this, there we go. We get the letter J because we are accessing name of the first character in name. And it's not 1, it's 0 in this case because that's just how Python works. It starts with 0. Values always typically start with 0. Remember that. Remember that. Moving on. Third, moving on, we have Boolean, true and false. So this is pretty self-explanatory. I don't think I have to explain this. So basically, we are just storing a Boolean value of true or false in a variable. For example, I'm going to just write a variable, let's say, I'm going to write a variable, let's say, hungry. And I'm just going to assign a value of, let's say, true. And if I just go ahead and write this, ask it to print it, we get true. And if I have to ask what is the specific data type, again, Python automatically assigns the data type to hungry, which means I don't have to write things, for example, such as bool to declare it as a boolean, but rather Python already does it for me. So I'll go ahead and run this. I get the class of boolean. Now, up next, we have the tuple. Now, think of it this way. A tuple is essentially a list of objects. So let me go ahead and show you what I'm talking about. For example, I'm going to write my tuple. And the way we can initialize a tuple is by calling 2 brackets And then we can put literally any data type we wish inside of a tuple. For example, I can write number 1, I can write true, and I can maybe put a string. Let's say hi. So a tuple is essentially a collection of items, right, of any sort of data type. Now, another thing that we have to understand about tuples is that they are what is called immutable, which means we cannot change the value of a tuple. So what we see, what we initialize is what we get, right? So if I have to go ahead and print my tuple, I'll get the whole list, definitely. Now, another thing also about tuples is that they are what is called ordered. So just like a string earlier, where we can access each individual value within name, tuples also have the same property. So for example, the first value in my tuple will have an ID of 0, and then true will have 1, high would have 2. So likewise, if I were to, let's say, call a value from my tuple, let's say I want to access the variable of high, we know for a fact that it's 2. So to access that, I'm going to go to my tuple, I'm going to write these square brackets, and I'm going to pass in the ID or the sort of number that is linked to high. So we know it's 2, so I'm going to write 2. If I press run, there we go, we get high. Now another thing is, let's say a value doesn't exist within my tuple. For example, if I want to get variable number 3, we obviously would get an error because value number 3 does not exist in my tuple. And moving on to the last data type I'd like to explain today, which are dictionaries. Dictionaries are literally what it means. So let me show you how to initialize a dictionary in Python. So I'm going to head and write, let's say, names. And I'm going to write out these squiggly parentheses. And then I'm going to assign what is called a key value pair. So just like in a dictionary where, for example, a, a name, for example, or a word has a definition, likewise in a dictionary in Python, we have what's called a key value pair. So a key is the identifier and the value is the definition or the whatever data that is associated with that key. So let me explain what I'm talking about. For example, names, I'm going to call, let's say, John. And then I'm going to write the value of what is John. Let's say I'm going to write a colon. And then I'm going to just say another quotation mark. And let's say John is tall. So if I go ahead and print this, let's say I'm going to print names. You can see there we go. We get the whole dictionary. But if I were to access, let's say, a singular key value, for example, I wanted John, so I'm going to go ahead and put the square bracket. So let's say if I want to access the value of John, all I have to do is go ahead and pass in John into names. If I run this, I get the value of tall, which is associated with the key of John. So this is 5 of the most common data types in Python. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. In the next video, I'll be talking about what are lists, what are 2D arrays, and what are 1D arrays. And until then, smash subscribe. See you in the next video. Cheers.